Hi there and welcome back. This is Jenna from McGuire. Today I thought I'd share another way to stretch your stamps. And this is with a technique that I call silhouette stamping. This technique takes an outline stamp and changes it to create a silhouette of the outline stamp. As you can see, the two pairs here. It's just another way to use a stamp and get a different look. I'm going to share a bunch of different examples with you and also talk about how I created these blended colored backgrounds with the little stars along it. So let's start with these Halloween kitties. So on the left we have the outline image as it comes from the stamp, and on the right we have the silhouette. So here is the stamp set that I used. This is the Simon Says Stamp Creepy Cute stamp set. It was part of their Halloween kit. However, you can buy this stamp set separately. So we're going to just use the little kitty there along with this sentiment. I'm using my MISTI here because I am making multiple cards with this image. You could definitely just stamp this with an acrylic block if you prefer. I'm stamping this onto Nina white cardstock, but any white cardstock would work great for this. Stamping this with black ink, and then I'm going to heat set it. I always like to heat set my outline images before I move on because then I can be sure that they won't bleed when I add any kind of coloring or ink to it. Even if an ink is dry to touch, sometimes it will bleed with different inks. So here I am heat setting it. Now I'm going to do two cards, one where I have the outline like this one, and one where we do the silhouette. Let's start with this outline here. I like the look of that white image, the empty non-colored image with the color around it. I think it's a fun, different look. To do this, I need to protect my little kitty so that he doesn't get ink all over him when I apply that color. So I'm using my molotow masking pen. Basically, I just color this blue stuff, it's a masking fluid, over the kitty and let it dry. You want to give it some good amount of time to dry so that you can be sure that when you add color over it, you won't mess it up at all. If you do not have a molotow masking pen like this one or any other masking fluid, you can use rubber cement to mask off the cat. And I will link to a video here where I show ways to do that. This pen is a great tool to have and saves a ton of time cutting out masks. You could also instead just hand cut a mask for the cat if you prefer. When using a masking pen, be sure to stay inside of the lines. Now I'm going to set this aside and let it dry for some time, and while it's drying, I'm going to create my silhouette cat version. Now for this one, there are many ways to do this, and I'm going to share two with you today. This first way is my favorite because I end up with a black embossed shiny image. To do this, I start by coloring inside of the lines with a black pen. The darker the black, the better. You really want this to be solid. So what you'll end up with is a silhouette look of that same outline image, just a completely different look. Be sure to use an outline stamp that has a distinct shape so that once you color it in, you know what that shape is. So you want to use like a really distinct flower or something like that. And I thought this kitty with the witch hat was perfect. I'll have a bunch of other examples at the end of this video too. Okay, so once I have him completely colored in, it's time to heat emboss him. I'm using my anti-static powder tool, and then I'm going to color over the black with my Versamark pen. This is just a clear sticky ink that will allow me to heat emboss this image. I'm going to do like a section at a time to make sure that I cover the entire piece. I'll add my clear embossing powder and heat set it, and that gives it a pretty shine. Now you could have used black embossing and skipped that black ink underneath and just done the Versamark pen with black embossing powder, but black embossing powder can be a mess and kind of hard to work with, so I prefer this. If you do get any black on your Versamark pen tip, you can always scribble it off onto scrap paper. So I continued adding the Versamark ink and clear embossing powder and heat setting it until my entire silhouette image had shine to it. So now I have two pieces, one with the outline image with masking fluid in it, and the other that's a silhouette that's heat embossed. Completely different looks, and now we're going to finish off the card to be the same on both. I'm using some Post-it tape to mask off kind of a rectangle area behind the heat embossed cat image. I'll start with that one first. And I'm using the grid line on my work surface to help me make sure these are straight. Now I'm picking this up and putting it onto a piece of scrap paper so that I can easily rotate it to ink it from different directions. I decided to use Distress Oxide inks today simply because I find that they are the easiest ink to blend since they have a pigment property that allows them to blend easily and a dye property that allows them to be intense and dry. So I started by applying the spiced marmalade towards the bottom edge and the wilted violet towards the top edge. I'm putting the color very heavily on the edge and then kind of blending it up towards the middle. Now I'm going to come in with a third color, which is picked raspberry, and I'll apply that to the center. Now the key to blending these colors together is to overlap, and you want to overlap quite a bit. The more you overlap, the better the blending you'll get. So once I put the pink in the center, my last step is to go in with the first two colors and kind of allow them to overlap a little bit more using a light hand. So you can see this is very easy to blend. If you do not have these inks, you could use pretty much any dye or pigment ink for this technique, but I do recommend these. I also recommend Distress inks too, the regular. Okay, so now I'm going to rub away some of the ink from the heat embossed area, but before I remove the masking tape, I am going to flick some water on it. Because oxide inks react with water, when you sprinkle water on it, you get a little reaction and it oxidizes and lightens in those areas. This works great with Distress ink also and a few different dye inks, but the effect is best with the oxide inks. After I splattered some water, you can see them start to intensify a bit. I added a few little dots in areas where I kind of wanted some because I am a bit of a control freak, so I added a few dots myself. And then I heat set these lightly to dry. Okay, so next I want to go ahead and remove those masking pieces, and you can reuse those a few times if you want to. And I am going to again try to remove a little bit of that ink that's on top of the heat embossing. But I found if you reheat that heat embossing, it becomes nice shiny black again. So that's another tip for you. Now I wanted those little stars to kind of shine, so I'm using a shimmer pen here and just coloring right on top of each of the little dots that are there from the water that I sprinkled on top. And check out that shimmer that you get on those dots. I'm going to go ahead and do that to all of the dots, and it makes a beautiful difference. You could have used like a shimmer fluid and flicked that instead of the water, but this is much more intense. Okay, so now I'm going to do the same exact thing with the kitty that is the outline where we filled with the masking fluid. So again, I'm starting with the orange, adding the purple, and then blending in the middle with the pink. Now that masking fluid is good and dry, and it will resist this ink that we're putting on top. I am careful to not really rub too hard over the masking fluid. However, I found that it really doesn't rub away when I'm doing this, so you should be okay. I am again putting a heavy hand with this ink so that it has lots of color. Now after I'm happy with the ink on top, I do use a dry cloth to gently remove any ink that might be sitting on top of that masking fluid so that we don't rub the color around as we're trying to remove the fluid. Now, at this point, you should sprinkle on your water, but I forgot and I started to remove the masking fluid. You can see on the cat's face some of the masking fluid is gone, but first you want to sprinkle on the water, then remove that masking fluid. So ignore that I forgot that step. So I'm adding my little water droplets. I can heat set that lightly and remove the masking tape. And now we can go ahead and remove the masking fluid. The way I do this is I just use an eraser and I just go gently over the masking fluid and it kind of pills it up and removes it very easily. And before you know it, you have that perfectly crisp looking clear image with the bold color around it. It's just such a fun look. And I will come back to both of these kitty cards at the end of this video to show you how I pulled them together. Next, I wanted to show you another way to create that black silhouette image, and I'm going to use this example with a floral stamp from Power Poppy Vibrant Thanks stamp set. Just wanted to show you that many different outline images will work for the silhouette technique. So I stamped this flower on Nina white cardstock once again in black ink, and this time I am going to color it in with a black pen. This is a Pilot twin marker. It has the tip that you see here and a super fine tip. So if you have a tiny little image like this one with lots of details, it is helpful to use something with a fine tip. A Sharpie black pen would be great also. Now this time I'm going to skip the heat embossing completely. I told you there were a few ways you could do this silhouette technique. One is to just completely skip the heat embossing, and that does save you a bit of time. So for this one, I just colored it in with black ink and I started the inking on top. This time I wanted a rainbow background, so I used pink, blue, and a dark yellow. And where the colors overlap, I end up with a bit of an orange and green. And you can see it's very easy to do with these inks. Now, because the oxide inks have a pigment property to them, you can see that my black silhouette image has lightened a little bit. That's okay, we'll fix that in a moment. Now I'm adding little sprinkles of water and adding my own control freak dots of water too with the wet brush. Give that a quick heat set, and then I can remove my masking tape from this. Now as I remove this, I realize that some pink kind of oozed under my masking tape there. Never worry, all I did is heat set that so it was completely dry. Then I used a craft knife to kind of scratch the color away from the surface of the paper. This really isn't much ink, so this works great. And then I am using my monosand eraser to erase over that a little bit more and kind of soften it out. And nobody will ever know that that ink kind of bled there. And we have a nice crisp white edge. Now also, since we have lightened the black flower there in the inked area, I'm just going to go over that whole thing again with that same black pen just to darken it up. So in the first example with the kitty, I used heat embossing to resist the ink that we rubbed over it. But here I'm just going to color it twice with black ink and we end up with a crisp black image. So there's just different ways to do it. Whatever you prefer would work great. Now you know me, I like to go overboard, so I created a bunch of inked examples. So lots of silhouette examples for you, and I'm going to walk you through those in a moment. But I did want to mention that after I did my stamping and my inking, I did trim each piece down to 3 1/4 by 4 3/4. That's because these are going to go on 4-bar note cards. It's a smaller note card size that is 3 1/2 by 5 inches. So I have all my front panel pieces cut down and ready to stamp a sentiment. Now for several of my cards, I used a stamp from the Simple Sentiments 1 stamp set from Simon Says Stamp. This has a great variety of sentiments, and on this first card, I'm going to use You Are Magic. I thought that was a great sentiment for this particular card panel, which happens to be my favorite of the ones I created. Now, I wanted to make sure I got this sentiment straight. After all this inking and masking and all that stuff, I needed it to be straight. So I'm using one of my MISTI Creative Corners tools. This little L piece here is really helpful in getting a straight sentiment. You just put your sentiment right about where you want it to stamp, maybe a little bit lower than where you want it to stamp. Then you take the L right up against the edge and push it up until you have your sentiment where you want it, and it's straight because that straight edge pushed it up. Then you close your MISTI, remove the creative corner, and you have your sentiment exactly where you need it, and you know it's straight. I'm using my anti-static powder tool, and I'm stamping this with VersaFine black ink. That is a pigment ink that's really crisp, so I can add some clear embossing powder to heat set that. I added the panels to 3 1/2 by 5 inch note cards. Then it's time for our dimension. I wanted clear dots on a few of the stars to really intensify them and make that shimmer even more impactful. This time I'm using Nuvo Crystal Glaze. This is kind of runny compared to other clear accent products, so it comes out very easily. And I find that it does do a great job. I'm still looking at a comparison between this and other products like it, but it does come out very easily. So if you ever have concerns with having to squeeze too hard, this is a good option for you. So I did the same thing on all of my cards. I put the same drops and added them to the same size note cards. And I thought I'd show you a closer look at the final examples. So these are the cards I did at the beginning. I actually did 2 silhouette examples just because I liked the results so much. Again, this is from the Simon Says Stamp Creepy Cute stamp set. Here you can see that heat embossing that gives that nice shine to it, and how the crystal glaze drops dry to give you nice dimension and to intensify that shimmer that is under each of the drops. And for the outline image where we use that masking fluid, I did the same thing on the background, and I decided not to color him in, but you definitely could if you wanted to. I just liked how bright and vibrant it was against that colored background. Now here are the examples using the flower image that I showed you from Power Poppy. I did one that was masked, the example that you see here. I think that's beautiful to leave that uncolored with that vibrant background behind it. This one I used twisted citron and peacock feathers and salty ocean for the background. And I did a sentiment from that same Simon Says Stamp Simple Sentiments 1 stamp set. And I really like how those crystal glaze drops really intensified the color underneath. Now for this example, I did heat emboss my black silhouette image. So it had the shine to it so you could see the difference. And I used seedless preserves, picked raspberry, and spiced marmalade inks on the background. Now this was the one that I just showed you earlier where I didn't heat emboss the black. I just left it colored with marker and I did the rainbow inking over it. Now the sentiments on those last two are from this Gina K Designs All About You stamp set. I really like the sentiments in this one and what they have to say, and they fit perfectly on the card design that I used today. So I wanted to be sure to show you what that stamp set looked like. Okay, so the next example, this one I used the Gina K Designs Nurturing Blooms stamp set. This one actually is already a silhouette image. There's no outline to it. So if you don't have an outline image that would turn into a silhouette image by coloring it in, you could instead just use a silhouette image and do the inked background with it. I really like the bold color and simplicity of this. And this Nurturing Blooms stamp set is just gorgeous. I did stamp that with black VersaFine pigment ink and clear heat embossed it and then put the ink on top. Now my favorite card from this bundle today is this one here. I used Spiced Marmalade, Seedless Preserves, and Salty Ocean Distress Oxide ink for the background. And that beautiful palm tree image is from this Gina K Designs Tropical Skies stamp set. This stamp set has incredible images for building a beautiful scene card, and I plan to do a video soon using it. But for this card, I just used one image, and I was able to create like a classic simple card. Now this wasn't an outline image, it was already solid, so all I had to do was stamp it with black VersaFine ink, add the clear embossing on top, and then I could do all of my inking. So if you don't have an outline image that would turn into a silhouette image very easily, you can just use a simple image like this that is already solid. And for my last example, it's another very simple one. I started with a silhouette image, a solid image, heat embossed that, and then I added ink on top. The inks that I used are Peacock Feathers and Salty Ocean. And the stamp set I use is the Tim Holtz Stamptember stamp set. This is available in limited quantities, so be sure to check it out if you're interested. I used the You Are Magic sentiment again, but there are many sentiments on that Stamptember set that would work for this. So there you have a bunch of examples of creating a silhouette image on your cards. It's a great way to get more from your stamps. If you are interested in these products, I link them below in my YouTube description, but go to my blog for photos of all the cards and more information. In the middle are 2 other videos that are related that you might find helpful. Thanks for watching. I hope you come back soon and have a wonderful week.